tomorrow. How much superintendent soup?
Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Before I turn it over to Clerk Guthrie, I wanted to take a moment and inform the community that earlier in the last hour, Supervisor Ron Styka passed away, resulting from a traumatic fall that he suffered last Thursday. Speaking to the family, they wanted us to go forward with the meeting tonight. It was their wishes that we did so. And that's what we plan to do. The family wanted to thank the many paramedics and police officers who responded to their home at Belding Court last Thursday. We want to acknowledge what Ron meant to this community. It wasn't just Meridian Township. It was 30 years of public service. It was years on the Okemos School Board. It was years as trustee, getting elected here to the board in 2012, elected as supervisor in 2016, and re-elected in 2020. His involvement with the Knights of Columbus and Okemos Education Foundation, St. Martha's, the list goes on, how much that this gentleman gave to this community and his family. He was a very proud graduate of Cass Tech High School. If you ever talked to him, he grew up in Detroit, and he was a proud technician. He was a proud graduate of the University of Michigan Law School and spent 40 years in the Attorney General's office. He meant a lot to this community. And while there will be time in the next few, we wanted to start tonight by sharing this news with all of you. Our hearts, our thoughts, and everything we have go out to Georgia, his wife, his son Jason, husband Clovis, to his son George and Katie, to Joe and Megan, and James and Crystal, and their 5 grandchildren. His grandchildren were the center of his life. And Ron so loved Georgia, and thankfully they were able to celebrate their 50th anniversary this past summer. I personally just want to thank Ron for everything that he gave to this community, because his unbridled love of Meridian Township and his family will live on. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Clerk Guthrie to begin the meeting.
Thank you, Frank. We'll call the meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. Would someone like to make a motion for Supervisor Pro Tem? Trustee Wazinski?
I'll make a motion for Trustee Jackson to serve as Supervisor Pro Tem for tonight's meeting.
Support.
Treasurer DeShane supports. I'll take the roll. Trustee Wazinski?
Here.
I'm sorry. I'll take the vote for the motion. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Jackson?
Yes.
And Trustee Sunland?
Yes.
And Clerk Guthrie votes yes.
The result.
Oh, sorry. Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you, Clerk Guthrie. So at this point, I will open the regular meeting for the Meridian Charter Township Board of February the 15th, 2022. If you will, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm sorry. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Guthrie, if you would call the roll.
Trustee Sunland?
Here.
Trustee Wazinski?
Here.
Trustee Jackson?
Here.
Treasurer DeShane?
Here.
Clerk Guthrie is here. 5 board. Supervisor Stika?
Item 4 on our agenda tonight is presentations. We have 4. We will start with 4A, which is the introduction of a new police officer. And I believe Chief Plaga will make that presentation.
Good evening, board members. It's my pleasure tonight to introduce Kyle Cornell. Kyle may look familiar. Kyle spent a couple of years with us and left law enforcement for a short period of time for family reasons. But as many people who have been involved in law enforcement know, it's in your blood. So he had approached us and requested to come back, and we were excited that he wanted to come back. And so today, on the 14th, Valentine's Day, we were able to have Officer Cornell come back. He's a graduate of Saginaw Valley State University, grew up in Clinton Township, did a phenomenal job while he was here, missed law enforcement and came on back. So I present to the board members Officer Kyle Cornell.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for the opportunity to come back here to Meridian Township. It's a pleasure, and I look forward to getting back here and protecting the streets of Meridian. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item B, I believe Mr. Deputy Director Perry is going to introduce the presentation to us.
Yes. Item 4B is a presentation on the American Rescue Plan and also the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Bill, also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill. As the board's aware, we've been talking about these different funding mechanisms and how the township could potentially take advantage of those. With all spending bills, especially those from the federal level, there's lots of strings attached to them, constraints, different programs have different requirements. So in order to help us wade through those waters, we actually have Jeff Brown. He's a senior VP at Fishbeck. Fishbeck's an engineering firm we utilize for our water and sewer projects, have been for many, many years. They helped prepare the SAW grant for the township, which was kind of an assessment of our system. And again, Jeff Brown's here, and he'll walk through several slides and present those two programs to us, hopefully between 7 to 10 minutes. So, Jeff.
Thanks, Derek. As Derek mentioned, I'm going to try to keep it brief, but definitely open for any questions that you may have. If any areas you want me to go into more detail. As he mentioned, part of what we're looking at for us is more water and sewer, although there are other areas that you can explore. But a lot of the needs that are identified within the township's capital plan were created under the asset management program. And we did one for the sanitary and the water, but the sanitary had a grant, so obviously there was a lot more we could do on that. Did a lot of televising of sewers, a lot of manhole inspections, found a lot of issues, like with any system, to address over time, and created a capital improvement plan for that, which would all be projects that could potentially go through this type of funding. Here are a list of some. I know Rob and Giannis have a more complete list. These are some of the ones we identified in the early that have not been addressed yet. Probably the biggest one on there would be the County Park Lift Station. But there's certainly more within there, a lot of manhole rehabilitation and sewer lining over time to address I&I that could be included. This was more of the next few 5 years. So from the funding perspective, we're going to look at 4 different items. One is the American Rescue Plan, which you're probably fairly familiar with. The other is the bipartisan infrastructure law that was just recently passed at the federal level. Talk a little bit about the governor's clean water program, and then also a Senate bill that's currently been passed by the Senate, but not the House at the state level, and kind of talk about each briefly. So the Rescue Plan Act did allow, so the way the monies are distributed is through basically population down through there. So you can see on the chart, and you may already be well aware of this, how each individual entity got, and it came down to the township's portion on that.
Excuse me for a minute,
Certainly.
please. Is this screen supposed to be on?
Yeah, I think we're having some
Oh,
technology problems here. We were just able to get this. We had a problem with Comcast up until the last hour. Mr. Geebish just entered the room. The question from the Supervisor Pro Tem is the availability to see the presentation on the TVs here.
Yeah, is it not?
This one is not on. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
oh, you're fine.
It's our fault, yeah.
Yeah.
There you go, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please continue.
Okay, thank you. The timeline for the American Rescue Plan Act, you've obviously already gotten half your money. There's another half scheduled to come in May. Those funds need to be obligated by December 31st, 2024. And by obligated, typically that means you have to have it under contract. So from a wastewater perspective, what that would mean is you don't have to have the project completed, but you'd have to have a contract with the contractor to get that work done. And then the funds must be extended or expended by December 31st, 2026. So from a water and sanitary perspective, what could be included, and it's pretty broad, pretty much anything that's CWSRF or DWSF eligible could be used. You could use those funds for that. A couple examples, we're working with a couple other communities that are using some of their funds towards infrastructure. One of them, we're working on some wastewater treatment plant improvements. We've got another community that's putting it towards water main improvements, and another that's doing some pump station improvements. So pretty much if it's eligible under the CWSRF or DWSRF, which includes most of those, you can put that towards those funds. One of the questions that we had previously mentioned was there might be a question about, since you guys don't own a wastewater plant or your water plant, you transport your sewage to it and get that from that. And I know obviously both of those have projects going on, is whether or not any of that cost could be offset. And we did go through the EPA's questions and answers, and somebody did specifically ask whether or not it could be used towards a regional project. And the answer they gave was yes. So you could potentially use some of those funds for those projects. They would have to be eligible under this. And I know East Lansing's going through the CWSRF, so obviously it is. If people are interested in that, we can get you a copy of the question and answer and any more details for that. Moving on to the bipartisan infrastructure law. Below, this is what NSPE is, a diagram they put out showing where a lot of the pots of money going for. So we'll focus on the 1.3 billion there towards water and wastewater, but obviously there's a lot towards infrastructure and various other components. So starting with drinking water, there were several programs they have going on. So each one of those boxes represents a program. Partially fortunately, because you don't have lead service laterals, but unfortunately from getting money, a lot of those programs are geared towards that. So that's what several of the red boxes are. Some are kind of more obscure programs. But where you could actually get some money under that would be through the Drinking Water Revolving Fund. You'd have to submit a project plan and apply for funding. We have some communities that are doing that. They have not specifically stated how much could be used for principal forgiveness. When they split it through these programs, they don't call it a grant per se, they call it principal forgiveness, and it ranges. The law said it could be up to 49%, but we have not gotten a firm number from that. It's going to be distributed over 5 years. So starting next year, they'll be distributing a pot of money each. So we should have more, as this year's develops, a better idea of how much actual principal forgiveness would be available. And under the Drinking Water Revolving Fund, that might be for water main replacement, that type of stuff. And like I said, usually as far as going in this year, it's a little late, but you could put one in for next year if Giannis and Rob and you guys decide that's what you want to do. That is available. You have to submit a project plan. You have to submit an intent to apply in January and then submit a project plan in the middle of summer, and that's basically your application for funding. A similar story on the wastewater. Lots of boxes. Most of them really don't apply to the township coming through. The main one is the Clean Water State Revolving Fund program, which is the sister program for DWSRF. It's actually the larger of the two. It's a low interest, similar to the drinking water, it's a low interest loan, but what the law said was that a portion of it would be set aside for principal forgiveness, AKA a grant. That number is still probably going to be dependent on how many actually apply and how that lays out, and we're definitely keeping an eye on that. Similar time frame, if that's something you want to pursue, it'd be available. You've submitted an intent to apply in January, and then the project plan is due in the summer. Initially back in October 2020, it's more of an initiative than an actual law because only part of it had funding behind it. This is the drinking water. They have spent $207 million of that. It was mostly lead service lateral aligned. They had $100 million they put out that to replace available to communities for lead service laterals, and then also a certain amount of money for drinking water asset management grants, which you really kind of needed lead services to apply. Also talked a lot about wastewater funds. However, those did need an appropriation, and they were never able to do that, so that's kind of been put on hold for now, or wrapped up into Senate Bill 565. And with that, they're looking at potentially putting up to another $800 million into drinking water and clean water. The Senate has approved it. We're waiting on the House. It's still unknown whether or not they're just going to provide additional monies to SRF to create grants, or if they're going to administrate it separately. That'll have to get detailed with the House, until the House reviews it and it becomes a law. But some of the things they had talked about was a different grant program like they did with the water that you could submit on separately, which we'll obviously keep an eye on and let you know if any of those become available. So those were the four main ones. I tried to go quickly. I know today's kind of a solemn day, but I'm certainly happy to answer any questions on any of those.
Okay. Mr. Perry, you have anything you'd like to add?
At this time, I really don't. Again, we wanted to put together a preliminary overview of those programs to kind of help guide your future discussions on these programs, especially the ARP funding that, again, the community has to spend. So just didn't want you to think that that we're eligible for a bunch of these programs, even though they're mentioned in some of the media releases. There's really just a few programs that we can be looking at to spend those dollars.
Okay. Board members have questions. Treasurer DeShane.
Question for you or for Deputy Manager Perry. The Clean Water Revolving Fund seems to be a viable one for us to apply for. Is it involved? How involved is the application process, and how likely are we to receive funding based on what you know right now?
So unfortunately, it is pretty involved. You have to put together a project plan, which the township has done before. We assisted you guys to put one in a few years ago for one of your pump station replacements. The report's about yay thick, so it is a fairly extensive process. We have to come back to the board and do public hearing and have it out. We're waiting to see. I would say clean water is more likely than drinking water. Clean water is the larger of the two programs. For instance, clean water typically has about $800 million available, and last year everybody that applied for the clean water got funded. Drinking water is closer to 100, 150, and they have been getting swamped with applications. What I heard from Eagle this morning in a meeting was they got over $1 billion worth of requests, so that one is much less likely. We haven't heard an actual number on the clean water yet, how many got submitted, but I would agree that that's the much more likely to get funded.
Thank you.
Trustee Wazinski.
I should know this, but could you maybe just briefly tell us the difference between the Drinking Water Revolving Fund and the Clean Water Revolving Fund, and what those projects might look like?
Certainly. Drinking water, as the name might incur, is anything related to your water system. So it's water mains, water towers. If you had a water plant, it would include your water plant, but you get your water from Elmsma. So it's more on the drinking water side. Clean water is sanitary sewer. There's been an effort to try to, the spiel in the industry is, Coca-Cola makes Coca-Cola, even though water comes in. So dirty water comes in, we make clean water coming out. So clean water is wastewater. Sanitary sewer, or I&I, pump stations, and the like.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item C is our 2021 Township Annual Report. Mr. Walsh will present that to us.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I don't really have anything to add. The report's been out now for 2 weeks. It's available online. You all have a copy. It's available at both libraries. I've actually sent it to our 110 board and commission members as well, electronically. So, it's a 70-page document. It really encompasses our activities in 2021. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have this evening, but I know we've been through our goals and objectives at 3 different meetings, and this is really encapsulates what's in the report. So unless there's any questions from the board, I really would be repeating myself for the 4th time.
Good. The board members have any questions or comments? Well, the 4th item, item D, Mr. Opsimer would, item D pertains to Mr. Opsimer. As many of you know, Mr. Opsimer is leaving the board. And so at this time, the Township Board would like to acknowledge and pay tribute to his service to the Township Board in the last 5 years. And so I have a very nice plaque I'll come to you to read. This is called a tribute of appreciation for Trustee Daniel R. Opsimer for outstanding public service. Whereas Daniel R. Opsimer began serving the interests of Meridian Township in 2016 when he was appointed to the Township Planning Commission, and whereas Daniel was elected trustee to the Township Board in 2016 and re-elected to a 2nd term in 2020, he served as Supervisor Pro Tem for this board from 2019 through 2021. And whereas during his 5-year tenure as trustee, Dan has ably represented the interests of this board and the citizens of Meridian Township on the Capital Area Transportation Authority, the Meridian Township Land Preservation Board, the Corridor Improvement Commission, and the Downtown Development Authority. And whereas Trustee Opsimer has worked tirelessly to advance and achieve the goals and objectives adopted by this board, selflessly contributing valuable focus, perspective, insight, and energy to our most challenging efforts and subsequent accomplishments. And whereas Daniel Opsimer has been named Assistant Township Manager, Director of Public Works, and Engineering for Meridian Township on February 8, 2022, resigned as trustee on the Meridian Township Board. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Board of the Charter Township of Meridian, Ingham County, Michigan. This board wishes to publicly recognize, commend, and thank Daniel R. Opsimer for invaluable contributions to and impacts on the work of this board and the quality of life in this community. This board is grateful for your outstanding public service and wishes you well in your new job and future pursuits. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor, and thank you to the rest of the board. It's been an honor to serve our residents, and I look forward to the many years to come in this new role, and I look forward to continue working with you. Thank you.
We've come to item 5 on our agenda. This is an opportunity for citizens to address agenda items and non-agenda items. I have 3 cards for public comment. The first is from Neil Bowlby.
Before I start, could I ask that the home TV feed stay focused on the overhead projector so I don't have to read everything that's on these? I can summarize them, but they'd still be in the record. Neil Bowlby, 6020 Beechwood. First of all, happy belated New Year to the board. It's been a long time since I've been up here. I'm not a big fan of Zoom meetings. But I'd like to start by congratulating Derek on your new job. I'm sure you're well deserving of it, and you've served the township very well for many, many years. You have big shoes to fill, and I was doing some looking at qualifications for public works directors all over the country. They all have several things in common. I know you can't read this, so I'm going to just put them up there because later on people can freeze frame and actually look at it. Those are from Cascade Township and Pennsylvania. Here's a couple from Burlington, Vermont. The common theme in these is that the qualifications include academic training in civil engineering, public administration, or construction management, several years of experience in public works management, hands-on knowledge of infrastructure, and here's one from California, another one from Oregon. The overriding theme is that if people are paying for professionalism and paying $100,000 a year, that they're expecting professionalism and experience. So let's look at, for a minute, previous public works directors. This is his LinkedIn profile. And just to summarize, he had 27 years of experience before coming to Meridian Township. He has a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from University of Maine, and also a degree in traffic engineering from Purdue University. So his whole background is in public works and engineering. Derek himself, who was brought in by the manager, I don't remember whether there was a hiring for him, has 18 years of experience. Contrast that with the current appointee, who apparently has absolutely no experience in or training in public administration, civil engineering, or anything that's required for that. The thing that was most troubling about your proposal to get rid of actually searching for a professional is that the manager says that regardless of what you decide, he's sticking with it. He's basically thumbing his nose at you and saying, you don't get a say in it, you don't need a professional. Now the board has given power to the manager to oversee the day-to-day operations, but implicit in that is that he will make wise decisions and decisions that are in the interest of the township, the best interest of the taxpayers of the township. And I know you don't adhere to policy guidance anymore, but the manager is supposed to make decisions that are not imprudent or in violation of commonly accepted business and professional ethics and practices. And I think if you asked anybody, I won't put Derek or Janusz on the spot to ask them, given the credentials of the current appointee, would that application make it any farther than the circular file? I think you're doing a disservice to the township. Taxpayers' money is going to pay for this position. It manages a $12 million budget. And I just don't see how you can, in good conscience, go along with this. That you should actually do what you need to do to see that a qualified individual get put in that important role for the benefit of the township. I know you all have that ethic in mind that you should make your decisions based on what you think is best for the township. And I don't see how in the world you can think that somebody with no experience in public works at all. I'm done. Okay. Please do what you can to get somebody in that position. Thank you.
The next speaker is Steve Vagnuzzi. And Mr. Vagnuzzi, I failed to set the conditions for speaking before, but if you would, please try to adhere to the 3-minute rule.
Okay. I also want to speak on the same agenda item, 12E. I support the waiver for the following reasons. I respect Mr. Walsh's judgment based on his performance with the township to date. Filling the assistant manager without a gap is critical due to the 3 major projects that, well, one has already started yesterday, that are starting this spring. It allows for him to have a little bit of overlap with Mr. Perry, who has performed exceptionally for the township. I know that from my personal experience with him on the Transportation Commission. It avoids the time wasted by a phony interview process and the negative effect on the candidates not selected. In my career with the state of Michigan, I went through one of these where one of the members of the so-called interview committee couldn't even be bothered to show up for the first half of the interview. Dan Opsner, while he doesn't have the engineering qualifications, he has other qualifications that outweigh that limitation. He has extensive experience in the township and state legislature, and his connections from his work with the state legislature, I know, have already helped and will continue to benefit the township. I have known and worked with Dan for 10 years. He's a very hard worker, and he has a large contact network. He can find an expert on almost any topic. He will be an asset to the township. I am going to use an example of the Okemos Public Schools, who have had a recent unsuccessful experience with 2 different superintendents that were hired after a highly complex and long process.
Thank you, Mr. Vagnuzzi. The next card is from Yanis Esrati.
Good evening, board members and members of the public. I wanted to speak here. This was shocking, I guess, to hear about Supervisor Stryka, and my condolences to his family and friends. Yes, it would be a big loss, big miss for everyone around here. What a nice man. Moving on to a lot of issues that we're going to be dealing with. I'm going to address directly Mr. Bobby's comment. And truth be said, this is was very unusual circumstances. But I want to assure you that that position would be, he would be working under a very capable staff, just like Mr. Derek was. Myself, I'm a professional engineer. My staff, everybody knows Niall, everybody knows my staff, who have been there for, on average, at least 25 years. So the fact that he's doesn't have direct experience with public works, in my mind, is marginal. I think the organizational skills, communications, administrative skills is maybe paramount to that, as evidenced by the role Mr. Perry did. He's not an engineer, but he's a brilliant guy, and I know Dan is brilliant, so I think we're going to be in good hands. So let's get that straight. Yes, things don't look quite right, but I'm comfortable. If I could argue if anybody's going to be impacted by this, it would be me, but I can assure you and the public that we can handle this, and we'll give him our full support, and I don't think this issue is really much of a concern for the public and for everyone involved in the township. And I just want to add that Manager Walsh knows exactly what I'm talking about, and we're going to be working with him and getting even the Public Works and Engineering Department the support it needs. So let's be clear on that, and I think there's no reason to worry about this. You can always talk about that, and I've been there 33 years. Looking forward to help Mr. Dan till I retire, whenever that happens. And I know the rest of the staff is extremely capable, and I know we're not a big department, but we're very experienced, knowledgeable. So I'm just leaving it at that, and just rest assured, it's not going to be that rough of a transition, let's just say that. Okay? And welcome aboard. Look forward to work with you, and good luck, Mr. Perry. All right, thank you.
Thank you. And the last card I have is for Michael Osborne.
I'll probably speak a little longer than 3 minutes in advance, just to let everybody know.
3.5 minutes.
3.5, 4. I didn't time my little talk.
I beg your pardon?
I didn't time my little talk. That's why I elected to do it last.
Please try to do it in 3 minutes, sir.
Okay, well, I want to thank everybody for this wonderful Daniels Drain project. Brilliant move. How many of you would buy? I've got a car in the driveway here. Now, it's a nice car. It's about 12 years old. Hasn't had an accident. Tires are okay. But how would you like to buy that car? I'm not going to tell you how much it costs until after we decide what we're going to do. Once we have the contract signed, then I'll see if I can't figure out what the cost is going to be for you. That's what we've done with Daniels Drain. Most nonsensical thing I can think of. You don't buy anything unless you know what it's going to cost you. Now we have fabricated numbers that came out when this project first came out. And that's all fine and dandy. How accurate, who knows? The public wasn't allowed to figure it out. Public wasn't even very well informed. Why? Because the Daniels Drain is private property. This project is now in excess of 90% done, is private property. It belongs to the Cooperative of the Ponds. It doesn't belong to any of the rest of Forest Hill, any of the 320 people in Forest Hill subdivision. This project becomes part of the pond. Now, why would anybody accept, particularly from the township, to do a project on private property at the expense of the taxpayers? That's nonsense. You certainly wouldn't do it in my backyard. I've got a drain problem in my backyard, and just down the street from this is my house, and just down the street here is a gully. Manufactured house, and my house was manufactured in 1973. The builder put it in, sloppy job. The drains were slotted. The water plugged up, washed away my backyard. Guess where my water goes? It goes right there. This isn't even being addressed by the Daniels Drain, mind you. But it's going to cost $10,000 to fix it. I think the township should pay for it. What do you think? Guys here at the last meeting about the Daniels Drain, he talked about how he thought the people at the cooperatives being overcharged. Boo-hoo. That's not the rest of the public's problem. That's not the rest of the public's responsibility. They knew what they had when they walked in there. And when this complaint was made 6 years ago about water getting into a basement, nobody really even looked into that. In order for the water to have come up high enough to get into anybody's basement, it had to come up 10 feet. The water never got near that. So what have we done now? We scraped this pond out, and we made the wall of dirt to any basement be different. And now it's more likely to get in anybody's business. Somewhere along the line, somebody's got to start looking at things a little more accurately, like actually going out there and looking. I asked about funding. Why didn't we look into grants? There's grants all the time. I was told, no, there's no grants. I beg your pardon. You can get on the internet, you can find them all the time. So public 320 landowners are being charged $5,500 for what affects not even, this whole project doesn't even affect 1%. 90% of this, 99% of this project is for the ponds, for a drain that didn't exist there in the first place other than a small stream.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne.
Yep.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the board at this time? Then we'll move on to Township Manager's Report.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I'd like to use my time this evening just in case that the citizens who spoke, the three of them have to leave before we get to that agenda item. I've had great respect for Mr. Bowlby for 9 years, and it didn't change tonight. It's just the way he's looking at things and the way I look at them are just a little different. What we need out of this position, the only reason this position is titled this is because the charter requires it. In fact, thank you, Mr. Yanis, for, we didn't even have that in the original title. We put it in because it's required. It's not what, I don't need someone, you can have all the educational credentials you want, but the right fit is really what's important. And there's so much about Dan Obsimer that he brings to the table that wasn't discussed this evening. I went out and put Chief Plaga in his position, Amber Clark in her position, Abby Tehoff, Tim Schmidt, Miriam Madison, Derek Perry, I could go on, Mike Hamill. We've got a 5-star list here, and it's because of our recruiting and getting the right fit and bringing the right people in. If I needed someone who was going to know water and sewer lines, I have one of the best engineers in the state of Michigan leading our engineering department. I don't need an engineer to oversee an engineer. I need someone who's going to help oversee the projects, communicate with the public. It's a whole set of different job duties, characteristics of what we need out of this position. And some of the people who were mentioned this evening, I worked with some of those people. With all due respect, I look forward to the team that we're implementing. I recruited Derek away from Marshall to St. Joe. I recruited Derek again to come here because of his talents, not because he went to Michigan Tech or that he's from Baroque. I got him because of his talents and his ability to work with people, his communication skills, and all of that, big picture thinking. And he's done a tremendous job. And in closing on my report, I want to thank the 3 citizens who cared enough to come here and talk about this issue. And I want to welcome Dan to our team. He's going to do a great job. And I want to say thank you to Derek. This is his last meeting. And we worked together 14 of my last 16 years together. And I would recruit him all over again. And I wish him well in Marshall. The Marshall process took a long time. And if people wanted me to wait and follow a certain process, that means that with all the projects the gentleman in the audience right here is one of the people who designed the Okemos Road Boardwalk. Now, most communities would send that out. But 3 gentlemen, and I think it was Mr. Graham and Mr. Nunn and Mr. Schrady, they designed the whole thing. I think they saved us $250,000 by doing that. That's the talented team we have on our staff. So what we were looking for might be completely different than what a member of the public might think you'd be looking for with that title. And I get it. The title's a little misleading, too, because that's not what it's only required by charter. But we'll build our team up and continue to do what we do. And that's my report for this evening. I wanted to respond in case they weren't here later on in the meeting. The deadline for Marshall allowed us no carryover. We have significant infrastructure projects coming up. A typical recruitment takes 3 months. And I could leave both departments high and dry without any leadership because the Marshall process ended. Let's talk about that for a second. The Marshall process ended. Out of respect to them, I could have posted the job a month ago, but out of respect to Mr. Perry, it wasn't official. It wasn't official till 8 nights ago. And so I'd be just posting a job. And right now, the job would still be posted. We wouldn't have any leadership. And then I'd be waiting for maybe a month or two until we fill that position if we went with a statewide recruitment. So there's a lot of different ways we could do it. And looking at hindsight, I might have changed a couple things, and Mr. Schrady and I have talked about that. But we landed what I consider the 5-star recruit in this process. And I'm looking forward to Dan's work with us, and I think we're going to have a great team. So thank you for letting me present what my vision and where I was going with all of that throughout the process. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. I see your
Excuse me. Point of order, please. The next item on our agenda is a board member reports of activities and announcements. Treasurer DeShane.
Thank you, Supervisor Pro Tem Jackson. I am not going to give my usual report. I've attended all the typical meetings that are required of me, except to say that I did have the honor of attending the Xavier DeGroot Autism Foundation ribbon cutting with many members of this board and Police Chief Plaga and now Assistant Manager Opsimer. A couple weeks passed, and it was an excellent event, and that foundation is going to be a great addition to the mall, and we're very fortunate to be hosting that. And our economic director, Amber Clark, helped put that event together, and we had people from all over the region for that event and made Meridian proud. I'm going to use my time tonight to not to talk about Supervisor Steichen, because this news is very, very recent, and I'm hopeful we'll have time at a future meeting to pay him a proper tribute. We're going to miss Ron greatly. But we did know in advance of this meeting that Trustee Opsimer would be resigning, and so I'd just like to say a couple words about Trustee Opsimer. Dan has really been an all-star in this board the past 5 years. He's been knowledgeable, he's been a quick study on virtually every issue before us. He's been exceptionally strong in areas of zoning and planning, which has been very helpful to the board as well. He was really from the start pretty brilliant in his foresight to help us to put together the comprehensive police and fire millage in 2017, and then 2 years later, the road millage. And both of those are essential to the long-term viability of the township, not to be strangled by debt, and to fix the roads, which our residents care greatly about. And Dan was a big architect for both of those to make them as affordable as possible for our residents, yet still get the job done. Dan's really been a coalition and consensus builder on this board. He's helped us to see opposing sides and bring sides together, and we've acted very much as one, but it's taken some work, and Dan has done a lot of that hard work. With Supervisor Steichen and Dan's leadership, this has been a successful board the past 5 years, a very successful board. No one can reasonably argue that this township and this township government is not far better off than it was 5 years ago. Thanks to Supervisor Steichen and thanks to Dan. While we're going to miss greatly, Dan, your leadership on the board, all of our residents are going to benefit from your hard work, your commitment to our 44,000 residents, and your amazing problem-solving skills in your new role. So good luck in your new role, and we sure as heck are going to miss you up here. Thanks so much, Dan, for all you did for this board.
Thank you, Mr. DeShane. Anyone else? Trustee Wisniewski.
Thank you, Supervisor. I'm going to just make a few announcements, probably save a lot of breath when it comes to updates. When it comes to the boards and commissions that I serve on, one of them being Environmental Commission. National Wetlands Day was February 2nd, and thank you to our phenomenal Brandy Yates, helped to establish our website and promote that promote that as well as the other activities for National Wetland Day. Just want to mention that Emma Campbell has developed what we call wetland walks on Wednesdays from 5 to 6:30. The next one will be March 2nd at Ty Hart Preserve. Green grants, proposal deadlines were due today. We received 3 formal proposals with several other inquiries that may perspire, or may end up into something more formal. I'm also not prepared to express my loss for Supervisor Stika, but I do want to congratulate Derek on your new endeavors. Marshall's very lucky. And then also congratulate Dan on your new position in our township. Echo a lot of what Treasurer said and what the manager said. Dan's municipal knowledge and insight, it was unprecedented on the board since I've been here. His research skills are excellent and thorough. He comes to every meeting prepared and has this ability to work with residents to ensure, equity and ensure that their problem solving is in the best interest of both the township and the residents. So it will be a void in the board, but it's certainly a great addition to the M team. And I just want to congratulate and support the manager's decision given the constraints we were under to make this really important appointment. So, thank you.
Thank you. Clerk Guthrie.
Thank you, Supervisor Pro Tem Jackson. First, I want to make an announcement. The Meridian Cares, I am the Township Board Liaison to the Community Resources Commission, and they help spread the word and raise funds for the Meridian Cares program, which helps our community members in need. It's a very needed program, and they are having a fundraiser at Chipotle. There's flyers in the back. If you're not here and you're watching TV, there's flyers on the township website. You can find it there. And I know our communications team has been spreading the word out on social media and their e-newsletter and some various other things. So they have a fundraiser Wednesday, February 23rd at Chipotle. You do have to order online, and you have to show this flyer at the restaurant when you go there. So I encourage you to do that. There are other ways you can donate as well. I was very happy when I received my utility bill via email and opened it up and it said pay now, and I clicked pay now. It was fantastic on my cell phone. I clicked pay now, and then when I went to pay, it gave me the option to donate to Meridian Cares. And so of course I donated to Meridian Cares. So if you haven't paid your utility bill yet, and you need to, and if you don't know you can pay it online, you can do that, and you can donate to Meridian Cares if you'd like to. It's for people in need. I grew up in need, and so I'm happy to donate to others who have a need. So if you have the means to do that, I highly encourage you to. Also, we have an election commission meeting next week. We sent a notice to the newspaper today so that it can be published. We received information from the state of Michigan, from the Bureau of Elections, that one of our precincts is over the number of registered and active voters that we can have in a precinct, and so we know that we need to split that precinct. And we also have, through the reapportionment of the county commissioners, and where those new lines are, we're also looking at doing some other things with a couple of other boundaries. So just so that we can meet state law and meet the needs of our voters in the community. And so we have posted a public notice about that. It'll be on the website, and we'll have a meeting about that next week. In addition, shout out to our communications team for working with me so diligently on getting information on the website regarding being an election inspector. Since they put that information on there, I've received half a dozen applications. And so I know it is working. I know people are seeing it. And if you would like to have a better understanding of elections, if you haven't worked an election before, don't be intimidated. Everyone starts somewhere. You can do it. And we love working with people. And we invite you to fill out an election inspector application and be one of our over 200 election inspectors to oversee elections this year that we'll have in August and November. In regards to Supervisor Stika, to Ron, he always supported me in my career. I can't think of somebody on the board other than Mr. Veenstra, who was more supportive of me in my career as a township board member. He made me feel like an expert in my field. And I looked to him like he's like the grandfather of the township or father of the township. And, you know, I didn't grow up with a dad, so I just really appreciate all the support that Ron gave me, and my heart goes out to Georgia and the family and really close members to Ron, because he really was a fantastic person. And when I came on the board, he, you know, Frank knows this more than anyone, he'd call me up and say, "Deborah, you can't do that. Deborah, this is the role of a board member," you know, because I switched from staff member to board member. And he was just, you know, I called him last week and was talking about, "Ron, am I stepping on people's toes?" asking for him for his advice. He was just a really, really good advice giver. So fantastic person. Dan, I'll miss you on the board as well. Dan is incredibly brilliant, one of the smartest people I know. I would ask Dan questions, and if I had any questions about the board packet, it's kind of like Derek. Derek is incredibly brilliant. I would ask Derek questions and he'd be able to respond. So both of them are very similar in that manner. They're also similar in their customer response and customer service, and just there, Johnny on the spot, making sure that community members are taken care of. And that is our number one job as township board members, as staff people, as the township manager, as directors. Our number one job is to take care of the people. And I know that Dan will do that. He has a strong understanding of the ordinances. He has strong understanding of finances, way more than I ever will. So I'm very appreciative of his knowledge, and I'm appreciative of the time that Derek was here. We will miss you. Maybe Dan can fill your shoes, we'll see, but we know he's gonna do a pretty darn good job. And I look forward to working with him on projects that I worked similarly with you on as a director in the township. So thank you both for your commitment to this community and dedication to the residents in this community. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Ms. Sunderland? All right, I will take the privilege I have not had an opportunity to thank and congratulate Mr. Perry on his new opportunity. As everyone has said, we will miss you. We look forward to continuing to work with you from afar. And again, thank you for your service to the township. We can move on now to, we need an approval of the agenda. Trustee Wazinski?
I move to approve the agenda.
Is there support?
Support.
You got that? All in favor of, do we need a roll call? No. All in favor of approving the agenda, please say yes.
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 Opposed, no. The chair votes yes as well. And now to the consent agenda. Our consent agenda is communications, minutes of the January 25 regular meeting, the bills, a ratification of 2 new firefighter paramedics, and the treasurer's quarterly report. Is there a motion to Treasurer DeShane?
Thank you. I move for approval of the consent agenda as presented.
I'll support.
All right. So it's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. Would you call the roll?
Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Jackson?
Yes.
Trustee Sunland?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
All right. We move now to item 12, which is our action items. The 12A is Meridian Redevelopment Fund Grant Committee. And I believe Director Clark is going to present this to us.
Good evening, board members. Very quickly, we have received application fund requests for Village of Okemos development. The MUPUD amendment in July has a 200-unit residential, 32,000 square feet or more commercial requirement for development. So the developers have now potentially pitched financial requests to us. The request in front of you tonight is to appoint 2 members of your body to support the creation of a subcommittee for the EDC, for the Meridian Economic Development Corporation.
I'd like to discuss this briefly with the board in that I was at the meeting this morning when the redevelopment fund request came from the developer, the Village of Okemos, and it really shocked me. We have about a $2 million redevelopment fund, and they're asking for $4 million right now. They're not willing to wait for their TIF reimbursement. They want the money up front, if you will. And so this grant application needs to be vetted very carefully by the EDC, and again, when it comes before the board. So this is not a pro forma board of any kind, and it really needs to do some roll up its sleeves, sit down and talk with the developer as to why they want us to fund it up front and why they're not willing to wait for the TIF funding that this board has put in place for them to get reimbursed for funding. And the funding they're asking for is public works. It's the street work primarily. It's not for their own project. It's for the street and other infrastructure repairs that need to be done. I think we can all agree that it's a public good, but that's why the TIF funding was put in place, up to $10 million, as I recall, to pay for that infrastructure replacement. They're asking the EDC, and then they'll come to us to ask for a different route, which is for this board to empty out our economic development fund on one project rather than spreading across several projects, and to borrow or come up with additional $2 million up front for them to continue. So it's a very big ask, and it needs to be vetted carefully. Thank you.
Are there other comments or questions? I will add at this point that both Treasurer DeShane and I have regularly participated and attended the meetings of the EDC, and for some time have been following this process. Since the motion calls for the supervisor pro tem in this instance to appoint trustees to fill this role in this committee, I would like to take the privilege of suggesting Treasurer DeShane and myself as board members for this committee with the EDC, the subcommittee of the EDC. Trustee Wazinski.
Given your involvement, both treasurer and trustee or Jackson, I would support that and be ready to make a motion.
All right. Other comments or suggestions, discussion? Yes.
I guess just for clarification, it says 2 township trustees. It doesn't have to be like a trustee, right? Just 2 township board members. I just want to make sure that we do it right, that we don't have to come back or anything like that, because I also support those two names as well.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Clerk Guthrie. And we did look into that. And you are the Board of Trustees.
Okay.
So your term trustee.
Now I feel really dumb.
No.
All of us are trustees.
Actually, I asked this, no, it's not a dumb question. I asked the same question. And since you're considered the Board of Trustees, it would be 2 members of the Board of Trustees.
All right, good. Very good. Thank you.
So, Trustee Wazinski, would you like to formally make that motion?
Sure. Thank you. I'll move to support the request from the Meridian Economic Development Corporation for the Township Supervisor or Supervisor Pro Tem to appoint the Township Trustees DeShane and Jackson to the Village of Okemos LLC Redevelopment Fund Grant Committee.
Support.
All right, it's been, further discussion? It's been moved, Treasurer DeShane.
Since I made the initial motion, I would like to withdraw that initial motion to make way for the replacement motion.
That's right. Thank you. So the motion before us now is to support the appointment of trustees DeShane and Jackson to the Village of Okemos LLC Redevelopment Fund Grant Committee. Shall we have a roll call vote?
Trustee Jackson?
Yes.
Or Supervisor Pro Tem Jackson?
Yes.
Trustee Sunland?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Item 12B is for reappointment to the Corridor Improvement Authority. Is there a motion? Someone like to read the motion, Mr. Treasurer DeShane.
Thank you. I move to reappoint Bruce Peffers to the Corridor Improvement Authority for a 4-year term ending 2/1/2026.
I'll support.
All right. Mr. DeShane, would you have comments to make?
I
Add?
would only like to say that it's very fitting that this come up today because of all the boards and commissions that the Supervisor Steicha was most passionate about. It was the Corridor Improvement Authority. And he served in that many years and was passionate about the work they wanted to do and was pleased with the progress they were making. And I'm confident that Commissioner Peffers will carry on that legacy and will have a difficult time replacing Ron's presence on the Corridor Improvement Authority, but we've been very fortunate with a lot of excellent volunteers in this township coming out to help, and hopefully one will help come and fill Ron's big shoes on the Corridor Improvement Authority.
And Trustee Wazinski?
Just another thank you to the volunteers and the residents that serve on these boards and commissions.
Thank you. And so the motion is to reappoint Bruce Peffers to the Corridor Improvement Authority for a 4-year term ending 2/1/2026. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? No? All right, the motion passes unanimously. We have a second item for appointments to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Supervisor Steicha has made recommendations. Is there someone ready to make these motions? Or I guess we can make them all at one time. Okay.
So we have two motions on 12C. First motion to move to approve the appointment made by Supervisor Stika of James Koenig?
Koenig, I think.
To the Zoning Board of Appeals for a term ending December 31st, 2022. Second motion to move to approve the appointment made by Supervisor Stika of Phil DeShane as Township Board Representative to the Zoning Board of Appeals, term ending 12/31 of 2024.
Is there support for these motions?
Support.
Thank you. And additional comments? Treasurer DeShane?
This is coming back home for me. 9 years ago, I was appointed to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and I believe Supervisor Pro Tem Jackson was on the ZBA at that point, and this is a really important board, and it's a lot of hard work, and most boards and appointments do a lot of yes, yes, yes. This is a board that by definition says no, no, no all the time, and that's no fun sitting up at this table doing that, but it has to be done in many cases, so I'm looking forward to this challenge and bringing to it my 9 years of experience since that original appointment, so thank you all.
Any other comments? Trustee Wagnuzzi?
Thank you. I could concur with what Treasurer just said. It is a really important and a difficult board to sit on. So I thank you, Treasurer, for taking on that for the board. And again, to thank Mr. Koenig. He has great credentials, and appreciate that, this board meets twice a month.
Yes.
And it again is, you're guilty until proven innocent. So it takes a lot of effort and a lot of work. So I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. So the motion is to approve the appointment of Mr. James Koenig to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a term ending 12/2022, and to appoint Treasurer DeShane as Board Representative to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a term ending 12/31/2024. All in favor of the motion, please say yes.
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 Opposed? Chair also votes yes. Thank you. And so the motion passes, and these gentlemen are appointed. The next item is 12D, and this is the appointment of board liaisons to the Transportation Commission and the Land Preservation Advisory Board. Supervisor Stika has provided us with recommendations. Clerk Guthrie.
I'll move to approve the appointment made by Supervisor Stika of Courtney Wagnuzzi as Board Liaison to the Land Preservation Advisory Board for a term ending 12/31/2024, and move to approve the appointment made by Supervisor Stika of Kathy Ann Sunland as Board Liaison to the Transportation Commission for a term ending 12/31/2024.
Support.
All right, it's been moved and supported. There are further comments? Trustee Wagnuzzi?
I appreciate this appointment by Supervisor Stika. I actually reached out to him and asked if this would be appropriate, given my involvement with the Environmental Commission and my previous commissioner at the Park Commission, and he didn't hesitate. I'm not sure I got the email off before he emailed back. So I do appreciate that, and I am looking forward to expanding my presence in the environmental world.
All right. Trustee Sunderland.
Thank you, Supervisor Pro Tem. I too also am proud to have this vote of confidence by Supervisor Stika to the Transportation Commission. I know that Dan Opsheimer served well, and so I'm excited to learn more about this Transportation Commission and, be a part of it. Thank you.
Treasurer DeShane.
Supervisor knew what he was doing here. These are two really important commissions. Land preservation, if you poll our residents and you ask about certain topics and certain ideas, land preservation of our wetlands and our green space is very high on their list. And Trustee Wagnuzzi will do an excellent job as the safeguarding and protector of those lands. And Trustee Sunland, I think you'll find the Transportation Commission to be a really exciting group to work on. It's helped to expand the Cat Ready ride. It's worked closely more recently with the MDOT and the changes that are coming down Grand River. And Steve Vagnuzzi, who was here earlier, has chaired that in the past, and he's got an excellent background. I think the next big thing to come back from them will be the railroad quiet zones brought back to them. That came out of them, that commission 5 years ago. So a lot going on with transportation as well, and I'm sure you'll serve us very well on that.
Well, I'd like to thank you both for your willingness to serve the board in this way. The motions are for appointments of board liaisons to the Transportation Commission, Trustee Wagnuzzi, and the Land Preservation Advisory Board.
Oh, it's flipped. Wagnuzzi to the Land Preservation.
You're right.
Sunland to
You're right.
Transportation.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
The motion is to approve the appointment of Courtney Wagnuzzi as board liaison to the Land Preservation Advisory Board and Trustee Kathy Sunland as board liaison to the Transportation Commission. No further comments? All in favor of the motions, please say yes.
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 Opposed, no. And the chair votes yes. And so the motions pass unanimously. All right. We now come to item 12E. This is the waiver of the Personnel Handbook, Section P. And I think Mr. Walsh, Manager Walsh, will discuss this.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. This is the issue that was raised earlier this evening. There's 10 different ways to look at this whole process. The most important thing is getting the right person in the seat. That's the most important thing. The process is important. Here's the real issue I faced. The process in Marshall ended. It took a long time. It had ended, and I could not, in good conscience, in ethical way, post a position when the process was still going on. We thought the process was nearing, and then the contract discussions took a couple more weeks. It took us up till last week. I'll give you an example of, and if we would have posted a position according to the personnel handbook for 7 days, that would have taken us into this week. And then we'd have to interview. We lost the last week. This is the last week we have with Mr. Perry. Mm-hmm. We needed to have overlap. There's too much going on, and I'll take the negative hits for the way if people want to be. They can say what they want to say about the process. The most important thing is to hire talent, get them in the seat, and have a week together so these two gentlemen can work together. And if you don't think that's important, read the emails from the residents who had all the issues with the Okemos Road closure. Well, who was the first person to go out there and solve one of the main issues with the Okemos Road closure? It was Mr. Opsheimer. He went out there and met with a resident, and she's very satisfied now. This is why it was really important to get these two talented gentlemen together and have them working together and talking about solar, talking about the MSU to Lake Lansing pathway, and get them talking about the local road program, and get them talking about the Okemos Road project, the Grand River project, and so on and so on. The community signs, I could go on. But that's why I decided that we would move forward internally and get something done before we waited till the end of the process in Marshall. So that's what we did. My opinion, we got the absolute best candidate we could. We have very talented people on our staff, and they're going to blend well together. And so I'm asking you tonight to use what is available in the personnel handbook that allows the township board to supersede any portion of the personnel handbook, and that is Section P that says that jobs must be posted for 7 days. And we've always posted jobs for 7 days. In this case, the timing would not work for us, and it would have caused great distress to our staff not to have this overlap. So I'm just requesting that you do this this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion before us. Would anyone like to make a motion? Treasurer DeShane.
I'd be glad to. I move to approve the township manager's recommendation to forego posting the position of Assistant Township Manager / Director of Public Works as described in Section P of the Meridian Township Personnel Policy Manual. The purpose of this modification is to allow for 1 week of overlap between the outgoing Deputy Township Manager and the incoming Assistant Township Manager. Further, this appointment will allow the newly appointed Assistant Township Manager as an opportunity to immediately begin overseeing project management, such as the long-term closure of Okemos Road.
I'll support.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to allow the manager's recommendation, to approve the manager's recommendation to forego posting the position of Assistant Township Manager, Director of Public Works as described. Treasurer DeShane.
If I could speak to the motion for a minute.
Yes, please.
This is unusual, as the manager pointed out. We do follow our policy manual, personnel policy manual. We had unusual circumstances here, as the manager described. But I think it's important to understand that Mr. Perry has been working with the city marshal in this application for a while. He informed his boss, Manager Walsh, that he was doing that. That gave the manager, in fact, several weeks, if not months, to look at the landscape before him in the entire state. One of his hobbies is his Walsh consulting business, and as such, he's in touch with virtually any manager or deputy manager anywhere in the state that's looking to move to a different position. They would call Frank Walsh first, or call the MCL. There's a couple of different services, but Frank is well known in the industry, and they would likely reach out to him. So the idea that Frank wouldn't know what talent is out there is absurd. He knows it very well. He's a leader in the Township Managers Association. And secondly, in discussions that I've had with the manager, while it wasn't a formal posting of the position, there was internal discussions where the manager did reach out to various people in the township that might have been interested in the position to vet their interest in the position, and had discussions with them. So this process of posting it may not have been followed formally, but it was followed informally. And anyone who didn't think there was a lot of integrity in that process and true opening, it was a true opening for the best qualified candidate, doesn't know Frank Walsh very well. A man of high integrity, a man whose reputation is entirely based on his good word. And so this was an open and fair process. He did find the right person here. And while we are waiving Section P of the manual, it was an open process, and the best candidate was found in this case. So I'm enthusiastic about endorsing this decision by the manager to hire the deputy township manager, the assistant township manager. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there, Trustee Brzezinski?
In addition to all of the treasurer's comments, under usual circumstances, I would always encourage to follow the process. I think it's important. I think it's there for a reason. It ensures equity amongst those that could potentially apply that we might not know that are out there, and given their, their experience and or their education. But I think the manager mentioned earlier that leadership is more than education. Leadership requires significant amount of very specific qualities. And I always want to say Trustee Opsmer, Dan Opsmer has exhibited those over and over and over on this board. Again, if there's one person that knows more about the projects that are going on in this township outside of Deputy Director Perry would be, and our manager, of course, would be Mr. Opsmer. So given the demands that the manager was under and given what Treasurer said about doing due diligence, it may not have been the process, but I feel that the manager has done his due diligence to ensure that he has chosen a person that can meet these expectations and take on these really many and really important projects that are ongoing. I just feel that this is the best route that the board can go. So I support it in that way.
Okay. Trustee Sunderland.
Thank you, Supervisor. I was hesitant due to my background in human resources in the state of Michigan. I was very, very hesitant to approve of this process. After hearing, our chief engineer speak tonight, and he's very supportive, and he has a lot of confidence in Dan Opsommer's ability to get the job done. I'm willing to approve this waiver of Personnel Handbook Section P in support of our Frank Walsh's expertise in the field and in support of the engineer's expertise in the field. That's really important, that we have the confidence of two really highly esteemed individuals, and we have confidence, therefore, in Dan Opsommer, because he also has the confidence of these two individuals. So I'm willing to support this motion.
Thank you. I would only add that by experience, we have watched Manager Walsh build what we often describe as a superb team of, operatives is not a good word, but leaders at Meridian Township, and we have no reason to doubt that this change in the process will bring to us the same quality of leaders that we've always needed and gotten. So, the motion, Mr. Walsh.
Thank you. I really appreciate all that support. It means a lot to me. But I also believe there's something else I need to say, and that is when you look back and you reflect and you look at I would not have changed my decision one bit. I made the right decision. That's how I feel. People can disagree. But there's something I missed along the way, and that is I owed that gentleman right there, Giannis Yashredi, a personal conversation, and I didn't give him that. And I apologized privately to him yesterday, but I also believe when you do something like that, you should say it in public. So I apologize to Giannis Yashredi because we should have had, he's been here 33, something like years, and as our chief engineer since 98, does a phenomenal job. 93? 89, yeah. He does a phenomenal job for us, and I owed him a conversation before this developed, and I didn't give him that. So I wanted to publicly apologize to you, Giannis. Thank you.
Thank you. So the motion is to approve the manager's recommendation. If we're ready, all in favor of the motion?
Aye?
Aye. Aye, please say aye, and opposed, nay? No? The chair votes yes. And the motion passes unanimously. We now come to board discussion items. And 13A under this will be handled by Chief Hamill. He'll talk to us about Township Damage Assessment Plan.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the time tonight. So back when we redid the emergency support plan, one of the things I promised was that we would do a damage assessment annex. I believe it's Annex C. And with COVID, it delayed it a bit, but it gave us an opportunity to look at it over and over again. And then Director Schmidt, who is in charge of it, had an opportunity, being the new person on the block, to review it and give the final approval. So, you know, basically the plan is it's part of the requirements from Act 390, and it benefits us. And it really, what it does is it gives us accurate information to make appropriate decisions during an emergency, so we can inform the public. Think about the resources we need, whether we have enough resources or not, or if we have to ask for additional resources. And just basically supporting a response in general. There's two parts to it. So there's the preliminary damage assessment, which is really going to be handled like we do right now. So let's just talk about flooding, because that's really common. If we have heavy rain, myself, Director Perry, I believe Ken and his crew, my crew, DPW go around looking for areas that are normally flooded, so we can look at what is our infrastructure that's blocked, so we know how to inform the public and reroute even emergency response vehicles. So that's the first part, and what happens with that is we will formalize that with what we call a windshield damage assessment. And really, that documents critical infrastructure, areas that we have an issue, and this could be from a tornado, could be from flooding, many things. And then what we do within 48 hours to 72 hours is we go to the formal damage assessment, which would be Director Schmidt's team, Tavis Millerov, and then if it's a big event, they'll do a formal damage assessment and actually get in safely, look at the properties, document it. And what happens there is that's submitted to Ingham County, and if there's a declaration, depending on the incident, that supports us with potential dollars from the federal government, even state government. So that's really the concept. We've got training planned for Director Schmidt's group in 2 weeks, and we'll roll out their formal plan, and then we'll tweak it based on documentation and how we want to handle that. So that's really what the damage assessment plan's for and what's going to do.
Other questions? So Chief Hamill, what you will need from this board is adoption of this damage assessment plan to your emergency operating.
The emergency support plan.
The emergency support plan.
Correct.
And so that this question will have to come back to us in at our next meeting.
I guess.
For adoption.
Yeah. Yes, that's the process. So this is just formally laying it out on for you to question, and if you approve it, then we'll bring it back for a formal vote, and then we'll adopt it and move on.
Okay. Did anyone have an opportunity to read through it, take a look at it? You have any questions about how it's used, or? Trustee Wazinski?
I don't have a question about the plan itself. I did read through it, and I want to say I know it's really important to have funding appropriated, but also more importantly for me as a resident to know that this is in place and that we've got our chief in charge of that and our director. One quick question: is there a time constraint? Is the next board meeting an appropriate time?
Yeah, I mean, we can start the training and without formal approval, and if we have to tweak it anyway, it's not a hard process. So yeah, I mean,
okay,
absolutely.
Thank you.
Chief Hamill, is this new? Is this something we haven't had before?
It's just not, I don't think it was ever formalized before. I know we did it. So I guess where this goes back for me, before you even hired me here, we had the water, the big storm, and you had a lot of flooding in the township. I think it was early 2018. And I was working with the Board of Water and Light, and I was still working with Ingham County Emergency Management, City of Lansing Emergency Management. And the emergency manager at the time in Ingham County was the only one here doing damage assessment. And I'm thinking, That doesn't cut it. It was resources for them. They didn't have the people. So now what we do is formalize it here in the township where we have people that do this. As well, if we need help, depending on the size of the incident, we have Lansing, we can call on their damage assessment team, Ingham County, Delhi, and East Lansing to come in and support it if needed. So it actually helps build relationships too.
It also unifies the operations in emergencies across the county?
Correct, yeah, and if something happens in Delhi, East Lansing, and they need help, we have a team that now is that will be trained that could go in and support and help.
Okay. Was there another question or comment?
No, you stole mine.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I had the same question. I'm glad you asked it.
So I would ask the board members if they are satisfied with what is before them and are ready to support adoption. Treasurer DeShane.
I am, and I want to thank the chief for being proactive in this and seeing the deficit in the case of having the proper people in place to do damage assessment and bringing this to the board rather than waiting for another crisis to come and pass and be caught again without the right people in place. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
We have our chief engineer speak. Did you have something to say?
Well, I think we can have.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to add, Meridian Township is flood prone. Let's not kid ourselves. We've been so lucky we didn't really have a bad flood, and I just want to emphasize this because myself and Niall, our CFM, certified floodplain manager, we know how critical this is. And the reason I bring this up because this is another opportunity for our community as a whole to lower its flood rates. You may know about this. We tried for years to get certified or be part of the FEMA programs called the CRS program, whereby any home who has flood insurance would have subsidies reduced. And one of the things, communities who have CRS, they're ranked from on a scale from, I guess, 1 to 9. 9 would be what they called a no class. You don't have a class because you don't get any subsidies. And the lower you are, like 9, 8, you get major reduction in your premiums. And we've been trying for years to just get into the program, be at least a 9, but they would not allow us to do that because we have some violations we have to fix. I'm not going to get into that, but it's over the years we got a little lazy, lack, and we allowed some violations to happen on our watch, even though we're part of the NFIP. We're mandated, we're required to follow certain things. So when we tried to join the CRS, FEMA does its own investigation before they allow us, and they said, well, yes, we'd like to have you, but you got to fix these things. And I'm bringing that up because it's something that we've been trying to do, and we just, like I said, there was some challenges meeting that requirement. But once you join the CRS, this is the type of program that would allow us to get points, and we will benefit from it, or our citizens, by reducing their, if you are an 8, you can get a lot of points. You become, say, like a 6 or a 5, which would be basically manifest itself in very low insurance, flood insurance, specifically flood insurance. So I just want to share that and how critical this is.
Thank you.
Guys, before you leave the podium, with all this knowledge, what are you doing on the first and third Tuesdays of the month for the next year?
What's that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, and if you don't realize that flood insurance is extremely expensive, and it's at least a monthly mortgage for most any house. And what happens is a lot of places, or a lot of homeowners, after they get their mortgage and a few months into it, they just let it lapse after the first year. The financial institution's not watching. It's just so expensive. I can tell you Lansing's only about 17% that have flood insurance out of a lot of areas. So it's very difficult. It's expensive.
So what you're telling us is that by creating this plan and adopting it for as a part of our emergency response officially, then we are in more than one way economically changing the outlook for emergency response and financial repercussions for our residents, for all of our residents.
Well, I knew about the emergency response. That was good news. Thank you.
All right. Well, one other question. This plan that you have to respond involves many departments in the township?
Yeah, so the initial preliminary emergency response, the intent is to look at critical infrastructure. If we have trees down from a tornado, what roads are closed, what buildings are damaged, like this building. And that's going to be done by a multitude of people. Once we're done with some of the critical emergency response, we'll send crews out doing windshield surveys. Well, PD do it, Public Works will do it, and even Tim's group could do it. So really, we rely on a number of people to get that. And then once we document where a lot of the damage is, and we try to do that on a map, now we go out and do the official damage assessment where we document the levels. And if you look at the paperwork towards the end, it shows the 0 through 4 on the damage scale, what's destroyed, what's affected, what can be lived in, because they'll be red tagging a lot of places too, because they're not occupiable for many different reasons. Okay. Same thing with flooding, which is really our biggest threat. So Michigan, really the biggest threat we have in Michigan, and has been for years and years, and will be for years to come, is weather. That's our biggest threat.
They were very cognizant of climate change, aren't we? Yeah, thank you. I think what I'm hearing is that we are in support of adopting, we understand and support adopting this plan to our other emergency plans. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is, for discussion, is the Harkness Law Firm contract. Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. What's before you this evening is your contract with your counsel for prosecution services. We have the Fahey Law Firm that handles almost all of our legal services, but they don't handle the prosecution work. And the prosecution work has been going back to 2010, with Mr. Harkness. This would be like, for instance, retail fraud at Myers, prosecution. I believe drunk driving falls into that as well. Since 2010, Mr. Harkness has been your prosecutor through the Bodwin Law Firm. In 2015, if you recall, well, if anyone, so 2015, the previous board, actually 2 boards ago, Mr. Harkness decided to open up his own law firm, and at that time the board made the decision to go with Mr. Harkness as he left the Bodwin Law Firm. And that decision has been made at least once or twice since that time. So Mr. Harkness has handled prosecution work for the township going back to 2010, 2015 on his own. He has an office here in Meridian Township. The question before you tonight is, to ponder is, do you want to continue with those services? He is offering his services at the same rate he has for the last many years, $80,000 a year, with no increase over the 3 years. You do have the ability, I think it's section 28 under the current contract, that allows you to extend this current contract for 3 years, and I believe it would be May 1 of 22 to April 30th of 25. So that's what's before you this evening. That's the history of your prosecution services dating back to 2010. I can't speak much to the quality of those services because I don't work hand in hand. A couple times that I have, it's been very good, but overall I can't speak to that. The one who could, if you're interested, is your chief. He works hand in hand with Mr. Harkness So that's your history. I'd be happy to answer your questions. The chief here if you have questions about performance, and Mr. Harkness is here as well. Thank you.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry. The question before, where it is that you can extend this by 3 years or do a request for proposals. We can go out and take bids as well. Those are really your two choices.
Trustee Wazinski.
I was just going to offer the chief opportunity to provide any insight or additional comment.
Thank you, board members. I've had the privilege of working with Mr. Harkness now for several years. I've been here a little bit longer than he's been counsel, but he's a wonderful attorney. We are very satisfied with his work. He provides services that typically we would not get. We have officers that call directly to Mr. Harkness at many hours of the day, sometimes in the middle of the night, with questions, concerns about prosecutorial. He handles a lot of cases for us. It's simple assault, it's drunk driving, retail frauds, just to name a few. And he gives excellent counsel. He provides training for us. If you don't get him right away, the phone call comes back in 5 minutes. So we've been very satisfied next door. The officers are very satisfied. Our court services officers who work directly with him been very satisfied with Mr. Harkness's work.
Thank you. Mr. Duchesne.
While you're up there, Chief, I know you're shorthanded. What would be the impact if this board put it out for an RFP and we had, for example, someone that came in, a cheaper attorney came in and we changed, not based on quality, but just cost alone? What would be the cost for your department in trying to adapt to a new law firm?
It would cause us some struggles because everybody operates in a different manner, right? If you have a new doctor, if you have a new, a new mechanic, even if you take your car, everybody does things differently. We've worked well with Mr. Harkness for several years. We continue to work well with him, and it's relatively seamless for us. It would be learning a whole new process with somebody new, bringing them up to speed on how Meridian does things, and in the caseload we have. We've had previous attorneys before Mr. Harkness that thought that our caseload wouldn't be that significant. We provide quite a bit of work to Mr. Harkness.
Okay. Very good. And so Mr. Harkness has been our attorney for going on 12 years now. Anything in particular that stands out? You did say that the extra calls and extra training that aren't technically part of the contract are provided for the officers. Is there anything else that stands out that you've seen different since he became the attorney?
His communication about plea agreements. We all know that plea agreements do happen, and Mr. Harkness will call me personally and say, this is the plea agreement they want, and we talk about what is the standard plea agreement that we provide typically for that similar case with somebody with a similar background, because we want to make sure we're consistent in how we apply our plea agreements. And Mr. Harkness wants to do that, and he makes sure that he communicates when defense attorneys are pressuring to move outside of that area.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
I have a question for Mr. Harkness, if we could have him come to the podium. Thank you for being here tonight.
It's always a pleasure.
You're offering us to continue this contract at the same rate. We all know inflation is up there for a lot of companies. Prices are going up all over the place. So we appreciate that because our revenue isn't necessarily jumping up at the rate of inflation right now. But do you intend to provide the same level of service with this new contract as you are with the old contract, even though it's at the same price?
The short answer is yes. For me, it's hard to say this as an attorney, but with Meridian Township, for me, it's not really about the money. I love working with the township, and I think that's a combination of because my business is here, because my wife and I live here. It's very personal to me working with the police department to help protect the community. So while the attorney in me always wants to, keeps an eye towards, should I be, raising that contract? I am satisfied with where it's at. I'm happy to continue at that rate for the next 3 years. You'll get the exact same level of service that you've been getting since I've been at the helm in terms of prosecution. because both myself and my staff, we love working with the township. And in case you haven't heard, I mean, just by way of reference, you know, I'm very appreciative of the comments offered by the chief. You know, before I did prosecution, I did a lot of felony defense work, and I've worked with pretty much every law enforcement agency in the county. And I can say objectively that Meridian Township is by far and above one of the best that I've seen. So it's a two-way street. The police department makes it very easy to work with the township because they do such a great job from the top down.
Some of your cases have actually gone to the Court of Appeals and on the Supreme Court, and as I understand it, you did not charge us extra for that appellate work. I want to first of all thank you for that, and hopefully we don't end up in a situation like that again, but we appreciate the extra effort you put in to make sure that these prosecutions stood, even though the appellant in this case seemed to have unlimited deep pockets to continue appealing this case. You stayed with it and you didn't come back with a bigger bill for us, and so as a member of the board, I want to thank you for that extra effort.
Yep, and that is also included in the current contract, and, you know, knock on wood, we do have one that looks like it's probably heading to the appellate courts, but I will brief the board if and when that reaches that point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Clerk Guthrie.
Thank you, and thank you for your service to this community. We really appreciate it, and all your hard work. What are some of the tougher or cases that take a really long time, and what are the shortest? Because I don't really know this industry that well, so.
The shortest by far and away are the just simple traffic citations, you know, running a red light, speeding. You know, on any given day, or well, I should say, so just so the board is aware, the 55th District Court does all of its municipal cases on Mondays. And so they condense all those cases down for that week into about a 3 or 4 hour period on Mondays. And I generally have somewhere between 25 and 30 cases that I'm handling every Monday for the township.
Wow.
Civil infractions are very, very easy. I can usually dispose of them quickly, especially if the parties are represented. So those are the easy ones. As far as the more complicated ones, I would generally say it's a combination of either assault and battery cases, because, and certainly the chief can back me up on this, the problem that we have, and it's not just Meridian Township, but anywhere, with assault and battery cases, frequently you have victims that want to cooperate the day that it happens, but their interest tends to fade as time goes on, and some of them disappear, some of them you've got to really keep after them, because, you know, it takes a while to actually get to a trial if you have somebody that doesn't want to resolve it with a plea. The other really difficult cases are operating while intoxicated cases. You know, there are some that can conclude quickly. There are some that some people have very, very deep pockets. They hire attorneys that like to try to paper us to death with motions and evidentiary hearings and appeals and expert witnesses. And so those take much, much longer and are more labor intensive, but those are the important ones, because you know, when you have somebody driving around on a public road that's 0.3 blood alcohol, those are the people that need to be stopped. So
these cases, just so I understand, are they, you hear about them from the chief or from the court, or how does that whole process work where you know about these and you take action on them?
So they come to our office one of two ways. So by way of example, traffic tickets, both civil and some of the criminal ones, whether it's driving on a suspended license, improper plates, things like that. Generally, the officers will issue citations on those. Depending upon if it's civil or criminal and what the defendant does, if they request a hearing, the court will send us a notice, we'll request the file from the police department, and then we'll start building our docket. The flip side of the coin is some of those cases, well, I should say a lot of cases, all of the retail frauds, all of the high blood alcohol content, OWIs, all of the assault and battery cases are sent to us as warrant requests through our court services officer. So they will bring us basically a packet that has the incident report, all the witnesses, the criminal histories, all of that. And I sit down and review all of those. And if I find probable cause, I'll issue a complaint and warrant, and then our court services officer will swear to it. And we build that into our docket after, we don't get involved until the pretrial stage. So once we get a court notice, we'll add it to our calendar, and it progresses from there. So it's either a citation is issued or a warrant request.
I see you have a summary of the number of cases that you've done over the last, is this contract 3 years, this current one?
Yes.
Has that increased over time? Do you see that? I know our population has increased. Has, it's number 7 or 8 or something like that, or number 3, I'm sorry. It's number 1 through 3. 1,350 warrant requests, 922 cases.
It's tough to say for a couple of reasons. I would like to say that we've stayed busy. I can say that. And I think the numbers, in terms of number of cases we've handled, has stayed consistent. If you recall, a couple years ago, we added a whole new set of ordinances. And so we added assault and battery, malicious destruction of property, embezzlement, and I may be missing one. I think simple larceny. And so that gave us an uptick, particularly with the assault and battery. We noticed an uptick in cases because there's a lot of simple assaults, not just in Meridian Township, but in Ingham County. So we did see an uptick there. With COVID, it was an odd year, so it was hard to gauge. We weren't in court. Well, we were, but by Zoom. But we kept getting warrant requests, so it was tough to gauge how things were going during that year of COVID when everything was kind of shut down. But I think overall things have stayed very consistent in terms of numbers. I had thought that things would slow down once the numbers at the department start dropping, but they didn't. Some of these young officers are out there and very eager to enforce the law, which is great. I think some of the newest people on the road are some of the ones sending me the most number of files. So
if I hear you correctly, there's new types of cases that you have. There's a slight uptick. How long has this $80,000 contract been in place with the township?
I can say it's definitely been in place with my office since 2015.
At that same amount?
At that same amount. In 2015, we did, my former employer and I competed for the contract, and we both put in bids at $80,000. I can't say what the contract was with Bodwin when, after I left. I honestly don't remember. I want to say it was very near to that. It was either $75,000 or $80,000. It was probably right around that number. But it has been at $80,000 since 2015.
I'm gonna go on a limb, just give you some advice I give my husband, who's the #1 broadcast engineer in the country, and he tends to, he gets paid the same amount year after year after year for contract work, and I'm always like, but you're doing more and you should ask for more. So I'm just I understand the whole community aspect thing and everything like that, but there's,
So yeah,
I would approve more, in other words, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
and I appreciate the work that you're doing.
And I appreciate you saying that. I will, I guess I'll defer to the board because, the thing that I want to do is, I sat down and had a conversation with the manager and the chief, and we walked away from that meeting with an understanding, and so I don't want to.
Well, I'm not stepping on their toes. I'm just saying I appreciate what you do, and I think as work increases, everybody needs to be paid more person, so
sure,
you're included. That's what I'm saying.
I'm just saying I don't want to do a 180 on.
This is up to the board. It's your decision.
Yeah. Okay.
Comments? Thank you very much. You have something to add?
I just wanted to, two things. One, you know, I've said it, but it's a privilege working with the township. You know, we have such a, you know, I know you all know, and it's been said tonight, there's a great administrative staff that I interact with, you know, here at the township building, but, you know, Ken's department is outstanding. You know, he's got good leaders, great officers, and it makes my job that much easier, which is probably why I love it. That aside, I did want to say congratulations to Dan on his new role, and congratulations to Derek. You'll be missed. You're in good hands, though. Dave Revore, their attorney, taught him everything he knows. So. And lastly, I just wanted to offer my condolences for Supervisor Styka. You know, it's a very tough thing, but in situations like this, I like to think of the happy moments, and just thought you'd like to hear. You know, I used to run into Ron on occasion at Kroger. We would bump into each other and discuss how our respective wives had sent us on shopping missions. And one night I ran into him and I said, you know, I had asked, you know, how is Georgia doing? And he said to me, she's at a gymnastics meet. And I said, oh, grandkids? And he said, no, she's competing. And I walked right into that one. But, you know, it was that great sense of humor that he had that I'll certainly miss. And so anyway, I just wanted to offer my condolences. And if any of you have questions about anything that we're doing prosecution-wise in the township, everybody has my phone number and my email, and I'm happy to answer any questions at any time. So,
thank you,
thanks.
Mr. Harkness. All right, board, the options are to seek a RFP for prosecutorial services or extend the contract by implementing Section 28. What is your inclination? Mr. DeShane.
Well, I'm glad we got a chance to hear from Mr. Harkness and most importantly, from the police chief to hear how that relationship is going. And for those reasons, I, speaking for myself, would like to see us use our option to extend this contract. We have a lot of big decisions ahead of us right now, and this is an easy decision if we renew it. There is the risk that we could come across a vendor that could provide the services cheaper or possibly better, but we have services that haven't gone up now in 7 years, so I think we're getting a pretty good bargain. And we know from what we hear from the police chief that the services are exactly what our police department needs. I mean, my office has no interaction with Mr. Harkness. As manager pointed out, almost no one in this building contacts them. If we need legal help, we're contacting the Fahey law firm. Mm-hmm. But across the way, in the police department, their only contact is with the Harkness law firm. And so, based on what I've heard from them, they're very satisfied with that work. And since we're offered this contract at no additional cost, and a whole lot less work for this board not to have to go through the RFP process, I think it's a safe and prudent choice by this board to extend this contract for 3 more years at $80,000 a year.
Trustee Wodzinski.
I would concur. Based on performance, Chief Plaga has exhibited that. Mr. Harkness had included, some data points in the packet itself. It's a significant amount of work. I was surprised at how much, not how much work the police department does, but how much prosecution happens. So I thank you for your continued service. Based on the performance, as well as that this contract has been extended time after time, I'm comfortable, certainly comfortable, renewing the contract without an RFP, given that we stay at the same, at the same price that has been proposed.
Well, is there a different opinion? Then that sufficient information to move forward? All right. Then we'll move on. Thank you, Mr. Harkness, for the information, and Chief Plaga as well. We now move to item D, which is the fire ordinance update.
I think we missed C, Supervisor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, please, must not miss that one.
I'm waiting all night.
You're in denial of my correct.
Oh, goodness. Must not miss that one. So item C is Township Trustee Appointment Process. And I think I'll ask Mr. Walsh to cover this for us.
Well, thank you, Madam Supervisor. And as I look at this, this really should have been placed on for action because we need to move forward this evening with the process. I would think because keep in mind you only have this results from the resignation of Trustee Opsimer. So you have 45 days from the 13th.
Oh.
So we really need to wrap this up by the end of March. And 6 weeks will go by pretty quickly.
Okay.
So what you're being asked tonight is you would appoint a 3-member search committee, would be one. There was a suggestion in the packet in regards to that. We would put the announcement out through the HR office, through Director Tehoff's office, would put out the announcement, and the announcement would go out on the 16th, and we would broadcast it out on our website. I will personally send a notice out to our 110 board and commission members, and I'm sure the clerk's office, as usual, will be active in promoting this as well. So the process, if you approve what's been laid out this evening, you'd create a 3-member panel to review the applications that come in and determine who will be interviewed. On the 16th, which is tomorrow, we will put out the announcement of the process. The deadline will be March 4th, which would give 2 weeks for someone to consider. They would submit a resume, and there's a questionnaire that they would fill out. And then following the March 4th deadline, on March 8th, the search committee would convene. They would have, immediately following the 4th, we would provide, again, through Director Tehoff's office, we would provide the committee those resumes from those applicants. You would have until the 8th, you would convene on the 8th and determine who's going to be interviewed. And those candidates are then notified, I think it's by my office, of their selection to be interviewed. And then on March 15th, depending upon how many candidates you have on the 15th, prior to your meeting a month from now, we would set up the interview times, and of course those would be in accordance with the full board. The interviews of the candidates will be conducted by the full board. Okay. The search committee's role is determining who will be interviewed. This is the same process we used formerly when we filled when Trustee Wazinski was welcomed to the board, and I think that was back in December of 19, if I recall. So that's the process before you, the deadlines that are before you. Name a 3-person committee. February 16th, March 4th, March 8th, and March 15th would be the dates. And on March 15th, following those interviews, the board would then select who's going to fill the trustee seat that is now vacant. Thank you.
All right. So is everybody familiar with?
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Great.
Do I have to suspend the rules
To make a motion at this point, I guess so. First motion is to suspend the rules.
Yep, to suspend the rules so that we can take action on this item.
All right. All in favor of the motion to suspend the rules and take action on this item, please say yes.
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 Opposed, no. Chair votes yes as well. And so now you'd like to make the motion, Clerk Guthrie.
I'll move that the Township Board adopts the process for appointing a new Township Trustee, including the appointment of Trustees Jackson, Wazinski, and Sunland as the Application Review Committee, and adopts the application for Meridian Township Trustee Candidate Questionnaire.
Support.
Thank you, Treasurer DeShane. Any further comment? Clerk Guthrie.
I may be the only board member who wasn't part of this process before, so I appreciate the thoroughness of this document that was put together. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate the time that our committee will be taking to look at applications And our office has received some applications, and just so you know, and I did speak to the manager about that, and I've been holding them to wait to see what the board action would be on this. And so if there's anybody out there, I guess as soon as they heard that Dan was leaving, they wanted to be on the board with us. We must be fantastic. So I will send, if anybody hears this message that submitted an application, I will send those over to our HR director, Abby Tehoff, and then she will handle them appropriately according to what the board adopts tonight.
All right. Commissioner, Treasurer DeShane, I'm sorry.
We've actually used this process twice. And the first time was after Treasurer Bixby was elected as state representative and stepped down to become state representative. And I was one of those that applied for it, so I'm familiar with it from the other side. It is a fair process. It's a challenging one for applicants because it's really intended to vet those applicants and their skills and get as much information as we can for the review committee to then bring to the board unknown number of applicants. It could be 1, it could be 10. That's up to the review committee deciding how many they think are qualified not to be reviewed by the board. But it's a good process. It's been tried twice in the past 3.5 years, and it's worked.
Okay. With no further, Trustee Wazinski.
I'll just thank Supervisor Stika and Supervisor Pro Tem for choosing us. And just for the public to know that as a manager, I perform hiring interviews a lot, and I know Trustee Sunland you had in the past as well. So I truly believe in this process of interviewing and making sure that we are careful and intentional in our review process to choose top candidates. So.
Okay.
And you were also on the applicant side of this process as well.
I sat right there, yeah.
So it appears to be a tried and true process. So the motion is to adopt the process and to appoint a review committee consisting of Trustees Jackson, Wazinski, and Sunland. All in favor of the motion, please say yes.
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 And opposed, no. The chair votes yes. And the process is in place, and the clock has started on this process. All right. Now we move to, where am I?
13D.
13D5 Ordinance update. We'll hear from Mr. Schmidt.
Yes, ma'am.
Proceed.
This is a fire hydrant, as you would normally see it. We are literally talking about this piece right here. So this is a codification of longstanding policy in the township to require a specific nozzle connection for fire hoses. We have run into ever so rarely the occasion where the fire department comes to hook up and the wrong nozzle connection is on the hydrant. So what we are doing, consistent with my policy this year, is cleaning up ordinances. And so all this does is requires that when work is done on a building, the nearest hydrant is upgraded to the current standard as promulgated by the fire department. The standard right now is it's called a Stortz nozzle. It's a couple $100 fixture that goes onto the existing hydrant, and then the hose connects to the outside here. In rare circumstances, the entire hydrant would need to be replaced. We will address those on a case-by-case basis. But it's a very simple ordinance change to codify long-standing policy in the township. If there are any concerns, we'd love to hear them. Otherwise, we will do the proper notice and get this moving so we can get it in place.
All right. I have one question before you leave. Who's responsible for replacing that piece of equipment?
It will be the applicant
developer?
that is doing the work adjacent to the hydrant.
Adjacent to the hydrant. I
Correct.
see.
Do they also pay for it?
Yes, ma'am.
What's the cost?
Several $100s if you're just replacing the fixture. If we have to actually replace the hydrant itself, it could get into several thousand, and we'll obviously deal with those on a case-by-case basis.
So the township would pay for the
We would not.
hydrant?
The standard that we're putting out is that the person doing the work would pay for the replacement.
Okay. Is that how it's been so far?
Yes.
Okay.
And it is only for commercial properties. This does not cover residential properties. There is going to have to be a conversation at some point about slowly converting over all of our hydrants to this standard, but this does not apply to residential homes.
Thank you.
Okay. Trustee Wazinski.
Director Schmidt, I missed it. Would you mind repeating? So currently, who's paying for?
So it's the building owner or the applicant that's doing the work pays for it now. There's no change. All we're doing is simply codifying existing policy into ordinance so that there is no question as to the requirement.
Okay, thank you. And can you explain what this apparatus does and how it helps?
Chief Hamel would be happy to explain.
Hooks to the hook.
Thank you. You did almost good. So this is a normal hydrant we have, and if you look at some of the hydrants in the township, this is actually on here, and then this is a cap, but what we do is our large diameter hose, so what we use to supply our engine with water during a fire. We have 1,000 gallons of water in an engine. It takes about 5 to 6 minutes max. It's empty. Whoops, it's empty. And so what we do is we use the large diameter hose so we can supply thousands of gallons of water to put out a fire. This just makes it a quicker connect for us. Right now what we have to do is we have an adapter, and actually we have 3 of them because there's 4 different threads in the country. We just found out another one. We had a fire down here not too long ago. Down here, I'm sorry. And we didn't have the right adapter because we didn't know the threads were what they were. It was done years and years ago by mistake. So that's kind of what prompted the discussion on this to begin with. But what we do is we have an adapter that we screw on here, and then we connect our 5-inch set. So it's just, this really shortens up that timeline to get water where we need it. But once that's on there, this piece gets connected to the hydrant permanently, and this, what we call snap tight, is on it, which is exactly like that. And you can see some of these already in the township and other communities also. It's really the new standard.
And the longevity, I mean, it looks to be...
I think they last forever for the most part, unless they're damaged.
Thank you.
Yeah, hit by a car. Yeah, we don't usually destroy them because, our stuff just snaps in really easy, but...
Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
Okay. Clerk Guthrie.
I have a question for Chief Hamel. How much more time does it take when it's not fitting properly and you have to get an adapter or you don't have an adapter?
Well, so we were lucky on this one over here because it was just a really minor, like a motor that burned up, something like that. It was at one of the restaurants down the road here. So we were lucky we didn't have to. Otherwise, we would go to the next hydrant, which is roughly around 400 to 600 feet away. So what does this save in time? So how we operate at a fire is we lay into a hydrant, we stop at the hydrant, we have a hydrant bag, we throw the hydrant, we pull the 5-inch off the back, we wrap it around the hydrant, the truck pulls away, and then the individual that's going to connect to the hydrant, what we call dressing the hydrant, they take the cap off, this cap, and then what they do is they screw our device on there. It's what we call an appliance, which has this. So we're saving that time, a couple minutes at the most. But again, more water, quicker, saves property damage.
Yeah, seems critical. I don't like losing my internet connection. I couldn't imagine that.
So, Mr. Schmidt, what's going to happen next is you're going to make this ordinance amendment or change, and it'll come back to the board for adoption,
Yes, ma'am.
maybe in the next 2 weeks?
It will probably be back, and then I need to confirm my public notice requirements because this is outside of my normal wheelhouse of a zoning ordinance, so I just need to double check that, but it will be back at one of the next 2 meetings.
Okay. Is there no further questions or concerns? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We move to item E, Community service millage, Mr. Walsh. Dan, are you going to?
Yes, Manager Walsh had to
Work
step
with us
away and
here?
asked me to fill in on the last discussion item of the evening.
Yes.
Thank you, Supervisor Jackson, and thank you, board members. So tonight before you, we do have the initial discussion on the community services millage. So this millage was originally authorized by voters back in 2002, and we renewed it in 2012 with an increase from the original 0.1 to 0.15. Today, under the Headley rollback that has occurred during the previous 10 years, we are at a millage rate of 0.1483. And so this tax year, the millage generates about $282,000, and the loss represented from the Headley rollbacks over the previous 10 years, or 9 years, amounts to about $3,600 annually at this point. The millage does support several different programs, from the senior center and the programming at the senior center, to some parks and recreation programming, and then of course our human services programming with coordinator Darla Jackson. And so the question for the board really is, do you want to continue with a renewal of the millage? And staff's recommendation, which consists of Director Maisner, Coordinator Darla Jackson, and our Senior Center Director, Sherry Wisdom, their recommendation has been to do a simple renewal, so no increase or heavily override. And then the big question for the board is, which ballot do we want to go on, the August or the November ballot? And I would note for the board that the deadline for putting the language, approving the language for the ballot for August is May 10th. And if we do approve it and put it on in August, that would give the board a fallback. Typically around August 10th to the 12th is when November ballot language is needed. So in the event that something did go wrong, the board would have a fallback option on the November ballot. Okay. So that is the question before you this evening. We do have quite a bit of time to get the millage language in front of the board. And I'm here to answer any questions that you would have.
And you said the recommendation from staff is a simple renewal?
Yes, a simple renewal, and the current loss in revenue is $3,600 from the Headley rollback, so that's when our taxable value grows beyond the rate of inflation for the year, then the millage is reduced by that same factor. So it's a very negligible difference. If we did pursue a Headley override, we would have to change the millage language, and Headley override millage renewals do require some unique language that is very jargon, and it's very legalese. So okay. It complicates the ballot language for voters.
All right. So the Trustee Wagnuzzi.
One question for Deputy Manager. You mentioned so on May 10th, we'd have to have the ballot language prepared and ready for the August election on May 10th. And you indicated that in the event something was to happen, we'd still have November. What kind of things could go wrong?
The millage could be voted down. However, it's highly unlikely in this community, and this millage is always passed with broad support, but it gives you a fallback option. And voters are, we did have some internal conversations. Clerk Guthrie was on some of those internal communications on this. Typically, at least in recent history, we've always put special millage renewals and newly proposed special millages on the August ballot. So voters are becoming accustomed to seeing these special millages on the August ballot from the township specifically, right? Mm-hmm. And Clerk Guthrie also pointed out that there are going to be other millages and proposals on the November ballot. So it helps to disperse them and spread them out a bit as well from other taxing jurisdictions.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Mr. DeShane.
I like the staff recommendation to keep the millage as it is. Having just gone through another tax season, our voters are feeling, our taxpayers are feeling taxed the maximum right now, part of the general stress they're feeling, but certainly any kind of increase would likely have some pushback to it. But at the same time, I agree with Assistant Manager Opsimer that our community has supported this, and a renewal is a much easier thing to convince the voters to approve than an increase of any kind. And staff knows that if they can continue at this level, and it appears that they can, we can continue the senior center, continue the parks programs, as well as continue with our excellent Meridian Cares program. So there's no need for an increase. There's, why risk it being the approval by increasing it? It's really a unique millage. There are other communities in the state that have someone like Darla Jackson on staff that provide, if you will, a safety net and referral source for our residents in trouble. And we do have 16% of our residents that live at or below the poverty level. So she provides essential services for 1/8 of our community, and so it's higher than 1/8 of our community. I can't remember the fraction now, but a significant portion of our community is relies on these services. Not to mention our seniors, not to mention the families that benefit from the Parks and Recs program. So it's an excellent program. It's worked well in the township, and I strongly support us putting it on the August ballot for renewal.
Are there further comments or a different position? So what I'm hearing is a suggestion that we go for a simple renewal, which would essentially be 0.1483, and that we get to work and prepare the language before May 10th?
May 10th is our deadline, so we have plenty of time. We're ahead of schedule from previous years on this, and we will get with council and update the language and put it on a future agenda, possibly in March.
Oh, okay, great.
And to Treasurer Deshane's point, in the 2021 annual report, it's actually on page 14 of the packet, we do have the numbers for Meridian Cares and that portion of this millage. So we did have 439 homes served in 2021, and the total funding spent through Meridian Cares, which this programming goes to support that position, our coordinator position as well, but we did expend $38,307, which so far as I know is a record. In 2016, our funding spent was actually more households, but only $9,810. Right. So the support that was put in from the general fund during COVID has certainly made its way to households. And we spent twice that 2016 investment in 2020 with $18,311 spent serving 398 households.
Okay. Then we will move on with the assumption that, you said March or April.
March or April, we'll have it back before the board for approval on the actual ballot language.
Okay. No further discussions. We come to public comments again. Item 14. Are there members of the public who would like to speak again to the township? Or to the board, I mean. Okay, then we move to other matters and board member comments. Item number 15. Treasurer Deshane.
Just one quick comment to the public. Taxes were due yesterday. If you haven't yet paid your taxes, please contact our office about how we can be able to help you. As of March 1st, local taxes get turned over to the county treasurer, and a significant interest and penalty is added on to that. So don't delay. Call us. We can try and help you or put you in touch with people that might be able to help you with taxes, or certainly work out a way to avoid having your taxes turned over to the county. It's a penalty you don't want to have to pay. Good news is that again this year, 99+% of our taxes were paid by the tax day.
Okay.
So we're very fortunate here in Meridian Township.
And Mr. Opsimer, would you like to offer another reminder about the access to Okemos Road?
Yes, I would just briefly state for the public that Okemos Road southbound over the Red Cedar River is closed, so when you see the signage from the County Road Department along Grand River Avenue, please do know that the road actually is closed. You can only go southbound so far as Clinton Street, which is adjacent to the demolished blocks in downtown Okemos near the four corners of Hamilton and Okemos. And the detoured traffic should be taken north and southbound on Hagedorn and Dobie Road. We have done a couple of visits out there. One resident did call in with concerns, and Chief Plaga did work with the the Ingham County Road Department on relocation of some of the signs. So initially the blockade was actually down by the base of the bridge, and so people were going so far as the entrances to Wanch and Wanch Park, and then having to do a U-turn in the roadway. So the traffic patterns seem to be significantly improved as people kind of learned what was and wasn't open on the first day. So things look good, and if folks have any questions, they can contact the County Road Department or the township.
Or you?
They can email us at dpw@meridian.mi.us anytime.
Okay, I think Trustee was asking?
No, I'll let you finish.
No, well, I was just going to remind everybody that situation, we expect that situation to continue until November of this year, so, learn it now. You have a comment?
I have two announcements I didn't make in the beginning, but I will say my son's a junior at Okemos High School, and there was quite a bit extra traffic this morning, a lot of tardies, a lot of notifications happening. So you're right, we have to get used to it, have to plan for some extra time, so that, we can accommodate. So, but it'll be worth it in the end.
Clerk Guffey?
Thank you. So this is going to continue through November, through both elections, and MDOT will begin their work on Grand River in March. And so I highly encourage people to vote from home. If you're not, if you haven't signed up to receive an absentee ballot, to get an application for an absentee ballot, I highly encourage you to go to the State of Michigan's website and do that, or go to the township's website. We have the information on there as well, to vote from home and avoid the headache. I tried going down Dobie Road yesterday. It was backed up to Faith Lutheran, and it took me almost 20 minutes to get down the road. So, yes, we want all the votes in.
Okay. Thank you. So item 16.
Two more announcements. I'm sorry, I didn't do this in the beginning, but they're coming up quick. On February 26th, there's a special event that's put on by the Environmental Commission at the Marketplace on the Green. And they'll be having compost bin sale, pots and pans collection that will be delivered to folks that might need them through the food pantry. And then they're going to do upcycled products, which I should have known, but I had to ask. And that's taking used products and making them into cool art or other usable things. So that sounds pretty fun, even though it's in the middle of winter. I'm going to go. That's being hosted by the Okemos Earth Club and MSU Surplus. And the other one is on March 2nd, the energy team has a kickoff for Solarized Meridian. So for that endeavor, they're looking to identify solar incentives. They're working to organize neighborhood workshops and beginning to create both educational outreach materials.
Okay.
Thank you.
The first event, the date again?
That would be, it's at the Marketplace on the Green, regular Saturday, but it is February 26th.
26th, okay, thank you. Anything else? Then item 16 on our agenda calls for a closed session. To go into closed session, we need a motion. Treasurer DeShane?
I move that the board go into closed session to discuss the written confidential legal opinion from the township attorney regarding the Winslow Mobile Home Park.
Support.
Moved and supported.
And we need a roll call vote for that,
We
I
do
believe.
need a roll call vote.
Trustee Sumlin?
Yes.
Trustee Wazenski?
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Jackson?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
It went much faster. It was kind of a shock, though. I
didn't know until I walked in the room, did you?
I didn't. Until I saw that. And I was kind of waiting. I mean, I was looking for it.
I was too. And I saw Frank about 5, and then I went in the office, had a quick bite to eat, and was working on a few things, and it just came out.
I knew it'd be. You always know it's gonna be hard, but you don't realize how much.
They had called Frank today. He was going to miss his afternoon meetings. Some of the hospital. And we don't have
Hi.
they want him to get a lot of Tuesday.
Um, 5 minutes?
Frank is really my best friend for
Yeah.
I mentioned lately his personal care. It's just exceptional.
Yeah, I dropped off lunch today. It was just drip assistant. What do you say?
They're back. We have,
Oh, thank you, Sam.
we have Mr. Fahey on the laptop zooming in.
Oh, okay. What do we use? Oh, that's right. That's what those things are.
Get some water.
Is there water in the machine out there?
There is.
Oh,
There's some in front.
bring me one. I left my wallet.
It's on me. You just want a bottle of water?
I would love one.
Okay.
Everybody else is pretty happy. I already went through all of his meetings on the Daniels drain, so he's going to be the loud dissenter until the bitter end. There are a couple others, but he will be loud.
So did he come late to the Daniel's Dream party, or was he in on it all the time? He came late?
He's been to the educational meetings that just don't click.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And it don't for some people.
He doesn't want to pick up.
Okay. So we will open the meeting at. Oh, yeah.
He's not back yet.
Okay. Thank you all. I think we did all right tonight.
I think so. You did wonderful.
Go ahead and kick it off, 'cause I don't know the first.
We're waiting for
lunch right there in that box. On the floor.
That would have been cold enough.
That there is.
Yeah.
Phil's gonna walk in with a handful of cold water.
We used to keep water back there sometimes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
At one point, we
And
used to have-
snacks. There used to be snacks.
And most importantly, some snacks back here.
I don't remember the snacks too well.
Want the peanut M&Ms back.
I think that stopped with Betsy, right?
It's been a while. We used to have a pitcher of ice water. We did.
Yeah, I think it stopped with Betsy.
No, it was here when I started.
Oh, really?
About right.
Did it stop with you, Courtney?
Stopped with COVID. I think it stopped with
That's
COVID.
probably
I
what,
can see
yeah.
that.
You're right. No one wanted to drink out of a shared pitcher anymore.
I'll just,
Everyone was like, that's how you're gonna die.
I'll just choke. It's okay.
Yeah, we just found out.
Group
We need a motion to adjourn, I believe.
Treasurer did, I'll support.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have a motion to adjourn. All in favor of the motion?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sad meeting.